Ça va, Mark?
Ça va, Anna, Vicky?
I think that's the extent of my French.
Are we in it?
We're in it. We're
Okay.
started.
That is
Uh,
so amazing. Anna, do you think we should tell the world how we met a little bit? Is that important?
I mean, I think it's important. It's important to me. I remember, I don't know, I might remember it differently than you.
That's what's making any friendship and relationship interesting. It's a broader experience because we hold each other's memories,
We can agree on the location.
which was
Same,
an
same.
incredible Thai food place in Silver Lake, which
Yes.
unfortunately fell to the dark side.
It fell to the dark side. That's just because I'm not there anymore.
Yes, and that was called Same Thai, and Anna was the manager there, and the most the most personable individual you could ever wish for as part of your dining experience. So much so that if you were on a hot date, she would make it a point to immerse herself into your date and make sure to basically be the end all be all judge of the outcome of your date.
The
And
arbiter.
yes, also known as a cock blocker, but
Well,
but it was always for good reasons, right?
never intentionally.
None of this being related to our topic today.
No. I do remember those slightly differently. I mean, all of this is true, but I remember one night I came in, I was not working. I was sick, stomach buggy sick, but I was feeling a little bit better. So I came in to eat, and you were sitting at one of the long tables, and you were being served by a guy named Nick, not my husband, Nick, a different Nick. And you were there with a hot date, and Nick was giving you a rundown of what to eat because you typically like to go with what people recommend to you. And we ended up talking that night, but I don't remember how. But it was not the first night that I served you. But I remember you coming back in and me being your server and recognizing you. And you had some fabulous hat like the one you're wearing now.
Because I don't have hair options, so I have
You have hat
options
options.
instead. Yes, it's far less
Exactly.
maintenance, honestly.
I would imagine so. I look
I
horrible
mean,
in
you would
hats.
know your hair color changes daily, right?
It changes frequently.
Yes.
This is very true.
Now, Wiki is a hair expert.
Wiki say, no, I pay people to be hair experts for me.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So,
To
but
business.
the most important thing, and this is where this relationship really took off as a friendship, is that I would never order from the menu. I would just let you present the dishes. And I completely trusted you, and it was always amazing. So that's how Anna and I became friends, and for what 2017,
Eight 8 years.
8 years.
8
Yes.
years. I also appreciated you had a very good ear and you always knew when the music was too loud or too quiet based on the number of people and the ambient noise. And you were very opinionated and would tell me it's time to turn it down or it needs to come up. And I appreciated that about you
Yes, I'm
because
a
that's how I am
yeah.
when I go to restaurants. I'm always thinking about you know, what the vibe is and what can be changed. And um, we have several musical taste things in common as well. I'm trying to
Yes.
remember the first time we hung out outside of same,
I
same.
don't know, but we had epic outings such as going to see The Nightmare Before Christmas live at the
Yes,
Bowl with the original cast.
correct. I think Florence
Was
and the Machine might have come first.
yes, it did. True.
That was, I think, the first thing we did outside of, yeah. And then Nightmare Before Christmas. And then
Yeah.
Moby,
Duran.
Duran.
Moby, I forgot Moby at the Echo.
That
Oh my
was
God.
really, really excellent. Such a great venue, so tiny.
You know what happened to this friendship? We don't hang out anymore.
Well, COVID happened.
Yes.
And
And
then
everyone created their little bubbles and have for the most part, not completely come out yet. However, and this is how we connect to our topic, we have
Yes,
finished the impossible. We had a get together for the premiere of the new season of the Bad Batch at my
we
place.
did. It was
Oh,
the first time I'd ever come over to your place.
yes, and here we were, like civilized people watching television.
Sharing an entertainment experience together.
3 episodes in a row on a very, very large screen with an epic Dolby sound system. So
Now, the wildest part about that is that most people, I mean, my boss would be a perfect example. He doesn't think I can go 24 hours without thinking about Star Wars. I disagree. I think I can go at least 48. But the fact that we have been friends for coming up on 8 years and we did not know about each other's fandom until like 3 months ago is insane. It's insane.
yes,
It's never come up.
yeah, you've hidden your game well, and I
Well,
will
you
keep.
too.
But I have to admit I'm nowhere on your level. That's why we call you Anna Wiki now. It's because you have encyclopedical. Wait, hold on. I'm French. I'm sorry if I massacre some words. So, do you have encyclopedic knowledge of every last detail of the Star Wars lore? It's so impressive. I'm like, I mean, you should get paid for that. You know what I mean?
If only this were a job.
Yes. And I'm like, how do you have room in that beautiful head of yours for anything else?
Because I forget to do other things that are important. Like there are important things that are not in my brain because of all the Star Wars knowledge that is in my brain. But I appreciate it.
And it is truly impressive because I'm like, there's a creature that you don't even see. You hear the noise of it in the Bad Batch, and you're like, yeah, that must be a
I don't know how to say it. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
See,
the thing
for as much as I know, there are people out there, if anyone's listening to this, I'm sure there are going to be people that are like, oh, well, that's the blah 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 blah. How could you not know that? So there's always someone that knows more.
It gets a little bit elitist in that way,
It can.
But Star Wars is fun.
And I don't think being a fan is what am I trying to say? I don't think you can measure fandom by how much you know. I mean, you can be the Star Wars original trilogy can be your favorite movies of all time, and you can not know the planet that Cloud City is on. And I don't think that takes away from the legitimacy of that being your favorite trilogy of movies.
Yes, indeed. Hold on, I gotta pause for a second, edit.
Okay.
Hang tight.
Diago. Now I have to look it up.
Hold on 1 second. I need to close things. There we go.
Dianoga. There we
Hey,
go.
there you go.
Look at that beauty.
It is spectacular. I wonder if it's single. Hey,
Dianogas get lonely too.
women haven't worked out. It's time to try something new. I'll try one of
I
those.
think there are other alien races we can go through before we get to the Dianoga.
Yes.
Like,
So I would beg to argue that, there's this meme thing out there that says that, the male population of the United States thinks at least once a day about the Roman Empire. I think they think about Star Wars,
I think there are many different types of men, but I think if you want to be reductive, you can bucket them into two buckets. The ones that think about the Roman Empire every day and the ones that think about Star Wars every day. Do you think there is an overlap?
Yes, both include an empire.
Both include an empire, but one is an evil empire.
Well,
I mean, Rome could have arguably been an evil empire.
Rome kind of conquered, the tribes of Europe all the way to England. So it's all a matter of perspective because
It
history
is.
belongs to the winners. So, but the reason we have a French language and a Spanish language and an Italian language and a Romanian language is because of Latin as a language. That's the root of most European language, except for England, the Netherlands, Germany. Okay, many of them. So thank you, the Roman Empire. Should we launch into Star Wars? And the reason
Yes.
I am here, because
Yes. The reason you're here,
you asked me to tell a story.
I asked you to tell a story. I I think it was before the Bad Batch, before we saw it. So I had just minutes before found out that you were a fan because of an Instagram message you sent me. And I'm waiting for you to respond because I'm going, I had no idea Mark was a fan of Star Wars. And then I get these like 3 voice memo messages from you of you giving me an abridged version of the first time, your first experience with Star Wars. And it was such a good story. I wanted you to come here and tell it. So would you please tell us that story?
All right. So I was born in 1967. By the time Star Wars comes out in 1977, I'm 10 years old. I think it's very important to put the year in context. What was happening when you were a kid in terms of science fiction and space and things of the sort. So, and I'm by no means an expert. This is just recalling my childhood and what I liked. Star Trek wasn't a thing in Europe. It wasn't distributed. We never saw it. But I would say that's probably the first variety of spaceships battling it out with a whole culture set in space, but we were ignorant of that over there. We had other shows. We had Space 1999, which was incredible. Had 2 seasons. It's like there's a massive nuclear explosion on the moon, and the moon like takes off from planet Earth and becomes a spaceship, and encounters civilization on its way to nowhere. And we were so hooked on that. It was incredible. You had you had things like the Twilight Zone. You had classic science fiction movies being perpetually shown on television, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Forbidden Planet, which was insanely good, still to this day. But in those, the model of a spaceship was a saucer. That's it. Then you had the Thunderbirds, which was an animation with puppets, and that was quite incredible. So all these things that captured the imagination of children. Then you had, and I think it was 76 or 77, you had the first Japanimation giant robot that landed on the screens of France. His name was Goldorak. And my God, we lost our collective mind. We were primed for something new. It was all the same, there was a Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it's completely undigestible when you're 10 years old. It's like, what's happening? I mean, to this day, as I rewatch it, and I appreciate it tremendously, but it's more science than science fiction almost. It's very abstract. I mean, we all know it's very abstract. So there's nothing on the scale of what was about to come. However, there were the format of the epic film was nicely coming along. You had, I want to say, to prime movie making towards Star Wars, you had a lot of biblical movies, which were quite enormous. You had Planet of the Apes, which was a milestone in science fiction movies in, what was it, 1968, I think, or somewhere around there. But I mean, Planet of the Apes was such an important movie to the point where the trailer was actually Charlton Heston talking about the special effects, the makeups, the sets, how far out they had gone into creating another world. And that was really revolutionary in that sense. So here we are. And I remember it being August of 1977. And I'm sorry, I should track back a little bit. There were a lot of great big epic westerns, and that's going to matter to Star Wars in a second, such as the damn it, I forgot the name of it.
Magnificent Seven?
Thank you.
Was that really it? Oh, there were so many.
Absolutely.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes, all this matters to Star Wars also, which, as George Lucas mentioned often, was really designed as almost a Western in space. You know, he said it many, many times. It was acknowledged that John Williams was very much inspired by the soundtrack of The Magnificent Seven with the trumpets.
Elmer Bernstein.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yes, exactly. So nothing happens in a vacuum. And however, there is the vacuum of space.
Oh, well done.
So it's 1977, and I have a friend who is 5 years older than me. He's my mentor, my childhood friend. His name is Francois. And Francois goes to Chicago for the summer, and he comes back, and he's a transformed young man. So he's 14 years old, and he comes back, and he's like, this is how it went down. We're in the kitchen at their parents' house, and he's like, I've seen a movie. It's the most incredible movie I have ever seen in my life. And we're like, yeah, like, what can that possibly be? La Guerre des Étoiles. That's Star Wars in French. Mm-hmm. So we're like, La Guerre des Étoiles? So by the name alone, you're instantly hooked. It feels massive. Now, mind you, we in France would get the movies in the fall, while the US releases were running in the summer. And we had to, that was strategic. The press was running, all the articles would come out. By the time the movies came out in the fall, everybody in Europe was just rushing to see them because they knew they had FOMO like crazy, and that would fill out the theater. But we would have to wait that long. It was a torture. So we're in the kitchen, and he proceeds to basically tell the entire movie, frame by frame, verbally, like it's a campfire tale.
Wow. And
all the kids are just quiet, dead silence. Oh, what? Really? And the scene I remember most, him describing, is when they fall into the trash chute, the compactor.
Interesting. Of all the scenes that you remember the most vividly.
For him, that's how he described it the most vividly. And that there was a serpent-like creature that suddenly grabbed Luke, dragged him underwater, and then there was the utmost. I think that's the scene where you really feel a big sense of absolute threat, because it's first of all you have the creature. Don't disturb the water. Never disturb the water. Just don't disturb the water. And then the compactor starts to push together, and it's like, oh my God, they're totally going to get squished. And then they have to take this big pole, which if you watch it again today, it definitely feels a little flimsy. But it's like you feel like there's a buildup of impending doom, and that's why he was so hooked on telling us this part. And then he proceeds to tell us everything. There's these things that are made of light, and it hasn't quite sunk in yet that it's a light saber. It's so new, so fresh, so incredible that you don't. And the spaceships are massive. We have never seen anything like this, and so we're hanging on to his every single word all the way to the destruction of the Death Star. So this was not a spoiler-free review.
Well,
Light
if anyone
time.
still has a hasn't seen it, they're
So
probably not listening to this.
you could say safely that in Europe, Star Wars started as oral history.
That is fascinating. And I
Because
wonder, because I've thought
because
about this. Oh, go ahead.
no, I just because if you're a kid and so there's no internet. There's no internet in 1977. There's just, there's no answer phones. There's if you want to leave someone a message, you write it on a note and you pin it to their door. So the oral tradition, the word of mouth, especially on the high school playground, is everything. When a kid has an interesting story, there's a gathering up of all the other kids around that person, and they gobble up whatever is being said. That's how culture was built in those days. It's like you knew what was cool because that's what would get the biggest listening audience on a school playground. And man, when I came to school that the next day or the day after, did I have a story? And yes, so you have literally months of oral history of the word being passed around about Star Wars amongst everyone. And by the time it comes out, it's the craze that it became. But now we're talking about having the legit experience. Even if I knew every scene, your brain can't compute.
Mm-hmm.
You have not seen anything like it. It blows you away. There are things that I remember things like the first time you see Darth Vader walk down the corridor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's a Nazi helmet. That was a really good way of establishing who the baddie was. But after that, you're just along for the ride, and your eyes don't blink at all. And it just becomes the thing everyone talks about. There's nothing like it that came before, and there's a lot like it that came after. But I think the oral history is a very unknown fact about Star Wars. You have to imagine an entire movie being literally recounted by kids that haven't seen it, but they already know all about it.
It's like a game of telephone.
Yes, with the details being preserved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we know how, I love these photos when you see the vintage photos of Star Wars at the Chinese theater, and you see endless lines of people. Like the minute people walk out of the theater, they go right back in line to come back in. People would spend the entire weekend at the movies just watching it over and over and over and over again. When you're a 10-year-old, you don't have the means to go to the movies that often, but I remember other things. I remember being on a student exchange trip in England in a pub, and a few years later they were playing the first Star Wars, and the whole pub stopped whatever it was doing, and boom, we're all watching the TV. It's not a big spectacle. It's a cathodic television with Star Wars on it, but it's Star Wars. So you stop whatever the fuck you're doing and you're watching. And you know what's going to happen, but now you're in this universe that feels so intimately familiar, with characters you're instantly bonded with, and you have an emotional vested interest in what's going to happen, even if you see it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So let's pause for a second.
Okay.
Are we doing good?
Yeah, this is great.
Okay.
Cheers.
So immediately thereafter, we're fed all the toys and all the figurines, and my God, they're so cool, they're so great. And the amount of design work that went into the development of even the smallest 5-second on-screen character that becomes like a fan favorite, because like those tiny little box robots that roll around and bump into things, we love them,
The little mouse robots.
Yeah, the mouse robots. It's like at
That's
every
true.
turn you have something incredible. So of course the stroke of genius, that's a known fact, is how George Lucas took basically a pay cut on his directorial fee and royalties. But he said to the studios, I just want the rights to the toys, and the studio was like, we don't care.
Yeah, fuck that. Take it. Take it all.
The mistake
I
of
think about that a lot. I think about that a lot. And like what ancient soothsayer he had hiding in his backyard that was like, oh, George, don't forget the merchandise. Like the witch in the well, or someone saw the future and told him to do that. Because I mean, for him to have that foresight of this is going to be big. This is going to make me a multi-billionaire.
I mean, if I remember correctly, a few making offs, the production, because they were trying so many new things, the studio was freaking out. It was made for what, $20 million at the time? Something ridiculous. Like the budgets don't feel big, but you have to adjust them for inflation. Like
Mhm.
Alien, okay, which we're going to talk about in a minute, was made for.
Okay.
How much do you think Alien was made for? The
Oh
first one.
man, you should ask my husband. I have no idea.
Take
No
a
idea.
take a guess.
$50 million.
Nine.
Nine. Wow.
Nine.
Wow.
So, and that's an entirely practical set built. Everything was, for the most part, practical. There's no CGI of any kind. Everything is a model. Everything is a built set. And even the planet, everything is built up, with one except. Okay, we're into alien territory. Let's come back to Star Wars for a second. So all this model building, all this green screen or blue screen at the time technology is new, and the studios are like, you're spending all this money. They think it's going to be shit. All they see is like these adults playing with toys all day long, and they're like, what have we done? So before you have the established success, you have the getting there, and the craftsmanship and the vision, which is very much put in doubt by executives who like existing formulas because they're known quantities that they know will make money a certain way. They can count on it. The unknown terrifies executives. So, they were met with resistance and people, always checking budgets, and they went over many times. And by the time George says, I want the rights to the toys, they're like, please go sell your trinkets. Interesting fact also, all the toys were under licensing by Lucasfilm,
Mhm.
except for the Stormtrooper armor.
Why was that?
It was just an oversight from the lawyers. And the guy who designed them, the company who designed them, never signed off the rights. So that's why you saw, for decades to come, a lot of things with stormtroopers in them, because that was free range.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was no copyright attached to stormtrooper outfits. Everything else, yes, not the stormtroopers. Amazing, right?
Amazing. The things you don't know. Was the craze the same? Did it carry on for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, or had it kind of died down, or was it?
Before we get to that, which is, we have to talk about what happens in the wake of the success of Star Wars.
Mhm.
So it is so enormous a thing that it eclipses everything else. And it creates its own category of movies. It's a year after Jaws, but suddenly every science fiction script in the universe is getting cleared. Encounter of the Third Kind was already in the works and came out the same year. but to a much different success. It's a brilliant film if you haven't seen it. Actually, the restored, remastered versions are just insane. It's such a classic. 1977 also. But that, I think, came out right after Star Wars. So Star Wars helped propelled Close Encounters of the Third Kind to the status that it reached. But every science fiction script that was on an executive desk at the time got greenlit. So get me your science fiction film. I want one of them Star Wars. You know? So what do we have in the immediate wake of Star Wars? We have Alien, that literally was done like it had been in prep for a really long time. So by the time it got greenlit, it was executed very quickly. And that came out in 1979. Then you have the first Star Trek movie, which is remarkable. That I think is 1980 or 1981. Then you have when was the first Dune, the David Lynch Dune? When was that?
Wasn't that in the 80s, mid 80s?
Yes, so that comes a little later, because making Dune, that is an endeavor. By the way, a lot of Star Wars lore is based on Dune.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who says otherwise is full of beans. 1984.
When is Empire Strikes Back?
1980, I believe.
So they moved really quickly there. So
83 for Return of the Jedi.
So I don't have any fresh memory on what happened with Empire Strikes Back other than we couldn't wait. It was amazing. It was a much more mature, movie, as we know. And it shocked us at the end because it gave us a cliffhanger. How dare them? And by then we were like so invested in the characters. It was wait, what? It ends now? And one of the main characters is frozen, and it's unresolved, and Luke lost his head. And what? That guy was his father? What? What are you doing to us?
The loss of the hand is a bit of a cop-out because you think, oh my gosh, he's lost his hand. And then before the movie ends, you see him in the hospital bed with the nurse droid giving him the pinprick. So he already has a perfectly flesh-colored cybernetic hand.
Yeah. You say
no, give us a little. I don't know.
Come on, Anna. It's like, but when you see, yes, it's a cop out by the time he gets a fix, but by the time when it happens, you're freaking out.
Yes. My first guests actually mentioned that as well. They saw it in the theaters when it first came out, and they also said that having cliffhangers in movies at that time was not a thing, and there was so much
sequels were not a thing.
Sequels were not really a thing, and there was outrage, not really outraged, but what the fuck? What is this?
Planet of the Apes had legit sequels.
Yes,
like 4 of them.
I haven't seen any of the sequels.
It's such a Planet of the Apes was so sad, so sad. It's just a sad story.
Very sad. Maybe that's why I didn't watch the sequels. I was too sad.
So, and obviously, then there's a very unfortunate Christmas special.
Yes, I am familiar. Life Day on Kashyyyk.
I'm not sure what is that?
Life Day is the celebration, and Chewbacca's trying to get home to his family on Kashyyyk in time to celebrate or something. I saw it a really, really long time ago, and low-key might have been chemically altered at the time, so I don't have the strongest memories. I would like to rewatch it, but isn't it kind of hard to get your hands on? Isn't George Lucas
you're gonna find it on YouTube or
yeah. I need to get around to rewatching it. It's been a long time.
So by the time we get to the Return of the Jedi,
Okay.
it's good. but it's good. But it by now we're I think the whole beginning of the movie with the you know Luke arriving at Jabba the Hutt um, Jabba the Hutt lair and tricking Jabba into uh, you know fighting the come on and we keep
The
the
Rancor.
yes. And I think that whole scene on Tatooine, all the way to the pit of despair with
The
the
Sarlacc.
thank you. See, Anna Wiki. It's like you people out there, the millions that will watch this podcast, undoubtedly,
Oh, sure.
all day long. You should just hit up Anna with your questions. Don't go look up online. Just
Mhm.
ask Anna Wiki. So I think that whole scene was just spectacular because it it moved us away from what we had seen prior. And then it moves us back into familiar territories. And here we are with the rebuilding of the Death Star, and it's now bigger. And where the hell did they get the resources in such a short amount of time? And
Yeah.
so it's problematic on many levels, but we needed a conclusion, and I think it was very wise to wait a while before getting into the prequels, which I think George said I'm waiting to have the right technology to get there.
hmm That's how I remember hearing about it as a kid because I saw the re-releases in 1997 when he put in some of those CGI like creatures that would just walk across the screen kind of for no reason. A lot of people got really angry. Um, and that was 2 years before Phantom Menace came out. But there were a lot of interviews where he was saying that's why he had waited so long because he wanted. And a lot of people give Andy Serkis and Gollum the mantle of like the first CG character, but it was really Jar Jar Binks, I think, predated by like a couple years, the first real CGI character in a major film,
Yes.
and Ahmed Best. And I mean, people love Gollum, people not necessarily so fond of Jar Jar, but I do think that those are huge strides forward that shouldn't be discounted just because he's not a popular character.
I think the not the mistake, the overcalculation of Lucas at this point is releasing is making movies on his own terms. He has carte blanche from 20th Century Fox to do whatever. I think his miscalculation is like, same with the Ewoks. It's like, oh, I'm going to sell more merch. So it's almost
I
like
love the Ewoks,
yeah, yeah.
but I
It's
was a
almost,
kid.
yes, I can see why. Um, um, I think at this point you can feel the calculations. It's almost like he's Disneyfying his own brand without Disney being involved yet. You know what I mean? And doing it for purposes that don't really serve the story. You know, I love how George. I'm not going to say his name correctly. Anawiki.
Jar Jar.
Thank you. Shows up occasionally, in the Clone Wars and here and there and actually is given the character a little bit more heft as opposed to
Mhm.
being completely goofy. And there's a little bit of redemption there.
Oh, in a huge way. And I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a poorly developed character at the time, just offered as comic relief in
Mhm.
situations that didn't need it at all.
And treated so horribly by fans.
Yeah. So you're racist?
I don't
Yeah.
even want to go there.
Yeah.
I will say one of my favorite developments of the Clone Wars animated series is that there's a very strong argument to be made that Jar Jar fucks. And that's kind of cool.
That who sleeps with whom? What?
He remember he goes to that planet. There's a queen or a ruler of a planet, and she looks like a duck giraffe lady, but she's like very regal and she has kind of a bill, and something's happening with I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it, but she's like, "Oh, hold me, Jar Jar, my love." And there's like a lot of chemistry, and they clearly have history together. And it seems they either had gotten it on or were getting it on at present. Yeah.
It
It
makes you wonder what the children will look like.
I know. You've got Jar Jar and then you've got Duck Giraffe Lady. I know
Yeah,
that, I mean, so for, like you said, Anna Wiki, I'm sure that there are people out there that have that exact species and her home planet name like ready to go from memory. But
get
for
a
me,
life,
it's the
people.
Duck Giraffe Lady.
Get a life, people, or not.
No, no. Star
I
Wars
want
is
to. I want
important.
to touch upon something that we owe to Star Wars and George Lucas and the people around him. Uh, if you think of the sounds of Star Wars in the '77 release, a lot of it is very high pitched. You know, the
Okay.
lasers are pew pew. You know, the only thing with a little bit of bass is basically the lightsabers. Wong, wong. You know, there's no rumble of any kind. Um, the TIE fighter is like some big tiger roar. You know,
Hmm.
uh, and that's very interesting. And when the movie was released, um, they were horrified. uh, Lucasfilm was horrified by how it sounded in theaters.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, "This is shit." Like you could hear the dialogues, but it was all the special
What?
effects were like in. Yes, yes, it was very interesting. Hang on to your microphone there with two hands because it's very big. Hello, free.
Just gonna whack my face into it.
Screen caption that. Um, okay, so yes, and I'm sorry I don't have the names. The stories are out there. Who's who did what, the actual names of the people. But basically, they go around America to watch Star Wars into various markets and realize that the cinemas are not equipped for sound in any significant way.
Huh.
Sound is completely flat. Um, it's not multi-directional. It's typically stereo or mono. The dialogue are there, but there's no dimension whatsoever. It's not even EQ'd. It's bare bone. A cinema is just a place of exhibition that sells popcorn, you know. So they take upon themselves to reinvent sound for the movies and create THX.
Wow. So when I was a kid growing up, every movie that you saw, every movie when you would go to the theaters had the
Yeah,
wow. So that was just created
that's
because the makers of Star Wars didn't like the way it sounded in
yeah.
movie
Not
theaters.
only was it created because, but it was created by them.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I forgot the name, the THX. Can you look up really quickly what THX stands for?
Hold, please.
Yeah.
DX meaning. Uh oh no, it's asking me what it's telling me thanks. THX sound meaning. Tomlinson Holman's experiment.
Yeah. There you go. Those
Holman
are the
created
two.
THX while working with Lucasfilm Studio to devise a new standard for audio reproduction. Wow, the deep note is the sound trademark of THX.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Of course, THX evolves into Dolby,
Mm.
which is so now you move away from frequencies. So once you have THX, and by the way, I think, and um, should come, I should have arrived here with prepared notes. I'm really sorry. But I think that Lucasfilm took upon themselves to equip the cinemas with sound systems themselves at first, just to be able to demo what that would be like, so that other exhibitors would then follow suit and start buying the equipment. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So uh, after that, you would have spaceships that rumble, you know, and now the sound, if you go, you know, when there's a big movie coming out, we have a little movie club in our building. We all go together and we go to one screen specifically, which is the Man Chinese. It's not called Man anymore. The Chinese Theater
Grauman's.
in Hollywood. Not, no, not
Not
anymore.
Grauman's?
Just,
Oh,
yeah, TLC,
I'm behind the times.
Chinese Theater. But you get on this on the IMAX screen and you have the most extraordinary sound you have ever heard. And the sound is now such an essential component of any movie experience. You know, I'm into sound big time, you know.
Yes, I have seen
So
your setup.
yeah. So, again, we take things for granted. Why do things exist today the way they are? Because the point of origin of great sound in movies is Lucasfilm, because they were unsatisfied with how their stuff sounded on television screen. I think that's incredible because that goes on to influence everything else.
Mm-hmm. And that tracks very well with my own experience with Star Wars, watching it as a very, very small child at home on our, whatever 15-inch
Tube
big
television.
box tube
Yeah.
television. And then being 10 years old and going to see it in the theaters in 1997 for the first time. And going on opening weekend of the re-release and hearing the THX thing and just it was like I'd never seen a movie before. It was and that, I mean, it makes absolute sense why, but when you're 10 you don't really compute all of that. It's just like, why is it so much, it's bigger.
I think it's important to return to this childlike state of just taking something in as opposed to analyzing it. And I think that there's a raw experimentation in the first Star Wars that just paid out. It's an indie film in the sense that it did not obey any formulas. It definitely, I could see the pitch being, hey, we're going to do a Western in space. Great. Well, that could have gone it anyway,
Yeah.
we have the hero's journey. I mean, there's some deep thinking around Star Wars out there, I think Star Wars, I think, oh, and one thing we haven't talked about at all, my God, Anna, what's wrong with us? The Force.
The Force.
The Force.
It's all about the Force.
The Force.
The Force is everywhere. It surrounds us and it binds us.
If you were not down with your parents' religion, which I certainly wasn't, I mean, I have a Jewish last name. I'm baptized Catholic. I'm neither. The Force spoke volume. This is suddenly a completely new age interpretation of individual resonance with quantum physics. And it checks out. It completely checks out. So, yes, the Force gives you suddenly a mythical interpretation of the world that is accessible to all without being insulting to any. But there's that dimension, the Force. We have a religion in Star Wars. It's not a religion. We have not a divine.
It's religion to some.
It's not divine. It's an overarching energy that rules everything, that some choose to recognize and some ignore, and some are more astute in as avatars of the Force, ergo Jedis.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think, was the most daring, one of the most daring aspects of Star Wars, is the introduction of that.
Well, Lucas had gotten really into Vedic meditation and did some of the same trips that like the Beatles took to the ashrams, and the whole Yoda's do or do not, there is no try. That's very central to the meditation technique. Um, and so a lot of that comes from, I love your little skull mug, by the way. A lot of that comes from that. So it has its roots in something real. And when I was younger, um, I can't take you seriously because you are holding your mug in front of your face. Or, podcasting is an audio medium, right, Mark? We can't see you. I can see you. I wish everyone else could see you.
Yeah, I'll have to take your word for it.
I'm here talking about gurus, playing with the mug. The
We
Force
can
is pretty cool, though. I
both,
have,
both
I have,
are completely compatible. Compatible. You can talk about gurus and goof around.
you can absolutely can. I have thought many, many times how fun it would be to start a Jedi temple in Los Angeles and just have it be a meditation group and have people come in and we'll repeat Force mantras and just sit and meditate and then
Do
sit
it.
by.
Do it.
Yeah. People, I mean, some people might think I'm trying to start a cult.
So start a cult.
It'll be a nice cult.
I mean, a cult is just a gathering of people that believe things outside the mainstream. Well, that may not be a cult because the Force is fairly mainstream. It's been proven.
Yes, this is true.
Yes. No, but I really love the idea of an energy that is not, I mean, it's not true because we are introduced to divinities of the Force later in the Clone Wars and Rebels, my God. Okay, there are people out there that say they're Star Wars fans, but have actually not watched Rebels.
There are
And
a lot of them.
and I'm
And I
like,
still think they're fans. I just
yeah,
think they're
but
missing out
we
on
need
some
to
of the
tell them.
best. We need to tell them. People
It's
need to know.
Rebels is maybe the best Star Wars story ever told.
So how did you get into the cartoons? Because I know how you got into the originals, but a lot of time has passed between 1977 and Rebels was what, mid 2010s? Did you watch it when it was coming out, or did you come to it a little later?
So I'm old and
No.
I have responsibilities. So my time, the amount of time that I have to dedicate to cartoons is limited, especially when there's so many other things to watch. But fortunately, we had a thing called the pandemic.
That was when I got into Rebels as well.
Yes. Prior to that, this is going to sound maybe a little surprising. I did not own a television until the pandemic.
I believe that. That doesn't
I
shock
watched
me.
everything online,
That doesn't shock me.
legally mostly, but not always. Watching things was basically something I would do on a corner of the screen. So my vested interest in these things was not massive.
Mhm.
But I think, let me rewind here. Since you asked me a specific question, I think creating an animated universe for Star Wars was very daring because it was going to be something different than what the movies were, which were celebrated as marvels of technology and innovation and special effects. And suddenly, boom, we're in cartoons territory. Not just cartoons, but to be fair, extremely woody cartoons.
Yes.
The first Clone War movie it's saved by a great story. And I think that's what makes those interesting, is that the story was always incredibly well crafted, with great voiceover acting, and suddenly they were able to tap into the greater lore, which is vast. I mean, you've read things. You haven't just watched things, you've read things. Star Wars Legends, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all I get. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you.
Okay. So, and then you know, the first Star Wars animated anything is a movie on top of it. So that's very daring. How is a movie as an animation going to fare? It fared okay, you know, enough that they decided to develop the Clone Wars as an animated series. And I think that's when Star Wars as a universe really took off. I think there's so much there. And it was unfinished. The Clone Wars was unfinished.
I know so many written episodes didn't make it into Clone Wars episodes.
And I think the last season came out like
2020.
yeah, like years after the seventh season finished.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they develop a complete different storyline called Rebels, which is, I think, honestly, the best Star Wars story ever. Which we get to see a little bit of these characters coming into live action into Ahsoka,
Mm-hmm.
which was wooden also, but for different reasons.
I still loved it. I loved it so much. When I saw Ezra's face,
yeah,
I just started to cry. Not really, really cry, but like I got super misty. Just seeing him and seeing his smile and seeing them interact together and knowing what you and I know about their relationship and their history and everything that they've been through and how important it was for her to find. I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm getting anyway.
so I hope we don't lose our audience at this point. Rebels is really vast and extensive. It's an incredible story. There's a lot at stake. There's people who are killed that are very important. There's so much humor. The humor in Rebels is spectacular. That's Dave Filoni really coming into his own, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole sequence with Ahsoka and Darth Vader into this.
Oh my God, heartbreaking in the Sith temple.
Yeah, and then entering this this otherworldly dimension, which we see in Ahsoka as well. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it is so deep a story that it's riveting, engaging. Don't miss out. It's like now you can binge it, which is what I did during the pandemic, and I was like, this is incredible, and I'm so glad they're developing that. You know, I don't know what's going to happen after Ahsoka, but the problem I have with Ahsoka is the direction lacked. It's very static. So maybe that's budget constraints, you know. You basically have a incredible 3D sets that are mostly green screen, CGI, and then the characters are just standing around like they're in a Shakespeare play. I mean, there's nothing going on. They're always just standing around and chatting. So there's not a really lived-in vibe to Ahsoka. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
In comparison, you take the Bad Batch. What's great about the Bad Batch is these subtle little details. They're always in the middle of something. You know what I mean? They're at a bar, they're eating, they're chilling, they're sleeping, they're, you know, assuming taking a shit on occasion. You know what I mean? They're part
Like
of
you
it.
do.
They're part of a lived-in environment. It's not like
Mhm.
they stepped on a set and are just standing around delivering dialogue. And Ahsoka was a lot of that. And, you know, it became really obvious that they were just it's weird, you know. It's like, yes, you can do incredible spaceship battles, and they were certainly impressive. Uh, um, the cinematography, because it's all CGI, of the spaceship battles in Ahsoka is the best we've seen for Star Wars so far.
Mm-hmm.
Completely incredible, mind blowing. The whales, which are really called
The Purgle,
the Purgle, those were absolutely mind blowing as well.
gorgeous.
My God. Thrawn was in my opinion, completely underwhelming reveal
Yeah,
compared to the series.
I have very strong feelings about Thrawn. I think I may have talked about this in the last episode, but I he's such an imposing character in Rebels. I mean, really chilling.
Yeah.
And he's
Smart.
such an so smart. like smarter than this. You think you're smart, he's smarter than you. You think you're thinking 5 steps ahead, he's thinking 10 steps ahead. He is always, I mean, he's so smart and so scary, and he's such a imposing figure in the legends too. And the legend might not be, it's not canon, but that character is still there, and he's still just as imposing. He's still a Grand Admiral. And for the most part, I'm very much in favor of giving the voice actor a crack at the live action role. And they did that with what was his name? Clancy Brown, I think that's the guy's name, who plays the governor of Lothal, the white-haired actor. I think that's his name. That was really cool. And so I was very much on the let's let Lars Mikkelsen give this a try, because he voices the character so well in Rebels, but he just did not have the physical presence.
No.
And I wanted, and I know this is like the most popular basic thing, but how so many people wanted Benedict Cumberbatch to be Thrawn, I think that would have been a much better choice. And fantasy casting. And he had a whole thing about why he didn't want to do it, because it would be too much time in makeup, and he has like a new family and all this stuff. But I wanted a scarier Thrawn, and I wasn't. He was just a little portly and a little just kind of walked back and forth a little bit and didn't
also
really...
completely like again, and if you I don't want to ruin it for everyone, but just mostly standing around.
Just mostly standing around.
In the Rebels, he's studying cultures to try to find the weaknesses in cultures.
And he's training his body. He's fighting with dark trooper droids, just like sparring. He's keeping himself sharp both mentally and physically.
So Anna Wiki, please refresh my memory. What is the planet that they find Thrawn on is called?
Oh, I don't remember the planet they find him on, but he is a Chiss. Oh, sorry, you're not talking about... Oh, wow. I thought you were talking about like in the books when they find him. You're talking about in the TV show that everyone...
Not his
home world.
When once taken away by the
all of this entire thing needs to be cut. Ask me again.
Okay, the planet that they go to in another galaxy.
Yes, I can't remember what it's called, but I do know that it is one of the homeworlds of the Dathomir, the Night Sisters.
So the Bene Gesserit.
The Bene Gesserit, exactly. I mean, kind of.
Yeah,
our plans are measured in generations.
Yes, it's interesting. We could make parallels between Star Wars and Dune
for ages. Yeah.
And it really speaks volume to the influence of Dune. Again, a point of origin, the influence of Dune into whatever happens next in science fiction. Star Wars is not a ripoff, but so heavily inspired by that.
Yeah. It's a send up.
Yeah, completely. So
at some point, I want you back on for part 2 to talk about all of we didn't even get to talk about like the visual stuff. I had questions for you about the volume. And we'll have to, that's a whole other conversation. So we'll have to do it.
We can have it now. I have absolutely I have nothing else going on for the entire afternoon.
No, I want to do another episode.
Oh, okay.
No, absolutely not. No, but for real, I do have 2 questions before we get to the email. Question number 1, we've been friends for a long time, and it's no secret you are a goth person. Look at your background, look at your skulls, look at your nail polish, look at your everything, your hat. So with your affinity for black and all things dark, do you tend to gravitate towards the darker elements of the Star Wars world, or are you more drawn towards the light? Does that color your lens through which you view Star Wars?
Well, I know. I'm glad you asked this question. No. There's a great misconception on what goth is.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a positive more than a negative. It's just that we're not necessarily macabre, we're just, it's a counterculture, first of all, and it's refusing. First of all, the reason I wear black is because it's very slimming and takes care of food stains whenever
Yes.
it occurs. So there's that. Okay. But also, it's like a preference for minor chords versus, what's minor
Major chords?
major chords? Thank you. It's really a preference. The goth culture is not a negative culture, not at all. It's acknowledging the darker aspects of life. The fact that there's so much skull. The skull is not a negative. It doesn't mean that we're obsessed with death. The skull is an equalizer. It's the end of the journey, as in this particular physical form for this particular vessel or life, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
A skull is not a skin color. A skull is not a gender. A skull is just the human condition. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. That's it. It's an acknowledgement of making the most out of life. And the black of the fascination with the occult and all these wonderful things. Some people prefer life at night because there's more room for the imagination to expand. You could say that goth began in the Victorian era, when Queen Victoria basically started to wear black after the death of her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And it went on for so long that people adopted black as a formal color. Before that, formal occasions, people were wearing whatever. After that, black became the formal color. That corresponds to a time when mysticism started to permeate aspects of Western civilization because of the colonies, where they were exposed to different cultures, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, goth is and black is the sum of every color. So, do I relate as a goth person to the dark side in Star Wars? Not at all. Not at all. Anything flowery and pretty and TikToky and and that is spoon-fed to us is the evil empire. It does not come in black. Doesn't come in a Darth Vader helmet. It comes to us as spoon-fed fucking crap,
Very well said.
Goth is a counterculture that still dares to, and it is victim of its own cliches and stereotypes, but it's very much saying, no, we're going to like other things.
I literally have a note written here that says, you live, and I mean this as a compliment, like a Victorian era vampire, but with a sick sound system. And I didn't get around to saying it, but you brought up the Victorian era part of it for me. I was like, oh, I nailed it.
Did you say Did you say a Sith sound system?
Sick.
Okay.
A sick sound system. Not a Sith sound system.
And the goth are lovers of the arts. The goth are, they don't draw divides through racial lines.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Cruel World, which is a massive goth festival in Pasadena on May 11th. You will find Hispanic people, Black people, white people. It doesn't. The lines are completely blurred. All welcome. All genders, all non-binary people. It doesn't matter. It's an acceptance of what is other.
That doesn't sound very dark side at all.
No.
Yeah.
But
well, that's very well said. I do still think if you could pick your own lightsaber color, it would probably be the dark saber, though. Yeah. Honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Very well answered. Now, let's get into Rebel transmissions. Hold on a second. Let me get to I have a little intro for this. It's time to decode some rebel transmissions. From Yavin to Hoth, no encryption is safe from the Empire. Today, we have an Instagram message from Brian at B. Hastert. Brian writes, why aren't the Clone Wars a way bigger deal? Like, the animated series is good, but the movie skipped right over all the best stuff. It's insane, all caps, that there was a gigantic, galactic-sized army composed entirely of clones of one guy. Can that be the new center of the fandom, please? I think that's a great question, Brian. Mark, I know you have opinions about this, so I'll let you go first.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I think that you need background characters in every big saga. And I think that the clones actually have been given their dues. At first, you need background characters. You need armies of no-name, in this case, stormtroopers, which are still the worst shooters in the galaxy. How the hell did they ever build an empire with that? I mean, come on.
That's the stormtroopers, though. The clones were good shots.
Wait, hold on a second. Were the stormtroopers not clones?
In the very, very beginning, and then they were replaced with conscripted recruits.
Okay.
Or I guess it's not recruits if you're
Okay.
Whatever, not clones.
So this person is asking, let's go to the root of the question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We have basically our long, fishy reptilian scientists creating clones on this planet.
The sexy Kaminoans, yes.
Yes, the Kaminoans,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's so we know there is a dehumanizing. I don't know how to answer that, honestly. I think that the purpose of the clones, maybe this is a little nefarious, is that it makes them less human, and therefore there's less guilt associated with killing so many of them in the movies. So, as a fact of history, it's horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a meat factory. But does that deserve to become the story? Well, I think that Bad Batch almost gives us an insight in that, because it tells the story of how nature finds a way through, and individual personalities can develop out of a program that is literally designed to have almost automated, fleshy, beings,
Mm-hmm.
that are very extremely controllable. Does that make sense?
It does. I think the question makes sense if you look at Star Wars from a more mainstream point of view. Let's say someone hasn't seen the Clone Wars, they haven't seen Bad Batch, they don't really know those things. They watch episode 2. Obi-Wan shows up at this random planet and they're like, oh, welcome. We've been waiting for you. We thought you were never going to get here. Here are your 500,000 clones. There are another 2 million on the way. And they're all paid for. So here you go. Enjoy. And then the movie ends with Yoda showing up with a bunch of clones, and they like save the day on Geonosis and everything's great. And it's like, begun, the Clone Wars have. Cool. And you're all excited for, oh, are we going to get a movie about the Clone Wars? And then 3-ish years later, Revenge of the Sith comes out. Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, Revenge of the Sith comes out, and you see a bunch of clones, and then a bunch of stuff happens, and Yoda says, ended the Clone Wars have. Or I don't know if he actually says that or if that's in my mind, but you don't get any of the Clone Wars in the movies. And and all of a sudden, Execute Order 66 and this entire army turns against the Jedi that they've been fighting with for however long. There's no explanation of like, where did they come from? Who really orchestrated all of that? And we know it's Darth Sidious, but like none of that is explained.
Because everything you just mentioned was not fresh to my mind now. Can we start over with that question? Are you okay with that?
Yes.
I would like to completely start fresh.
But I like this back and forth though too. So I'm fine with it. But I can read it again. Or let's just start talking about it again.
start fresh with the question as it was asked, if you don't mind.
Of course. Why aren't the Clone Wars a way bigger deal? Like, the animated series is good, but the movies skipped right over all the best stuff. It is insane that there was a galactic-sized army composed entirely of clones of one guy. Can that be the new center of the fandom, please?
All right. What do you think, Hannah?
Well, I think that when Attack of the Clones came out and we see all of a sudden there's a clone army of this one random bounty hunter, and we have no idea where it came from, but these people are like, here's a 500,000 and another 2 million are on the way and it's all paid for. Just take it with no questions. We get that, the movie ends, and then I want episode 3 to be the fucking Clone Wars. I want to see the Clone Wars, but episode 3 is the end of the war. So there's all of this stuff that happens, all of these relationships that are built between the Jedi and the clones. When the when the clones turn on the Jedi at the end of Revenge of the Sith, I don't really care. I don't have any sort of emotional feeling for them. They could have been evil the whole time. Like there's no sense of devastating betrayal. And I think I get what this question is asking. Like why isn't there more of that in mainstream Star Wars?
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit. We need to go a little bit back in time. First of all, episode 1, 2, and 3 are an insane, basically, political story of a coup. It's a coup. It's like Game of Thrones.
Orchestrated by the leader of the government.
Yes, exactly. So more relevant than ever. But that's, and you can watch it in a certain way as a kid, and you watch it in a completely different way as an adult, and you realize the chess pieces and the way they're moving. You can see the train wreck happen in slow motion, and you can see forces, tidal forces being put in play that are unstoppable, and that's what's making actually the overarching story quite good. But in the beginning of those sequels, you have a separatist army, which is basically a decoy false flag situation created to basically create a sense of danger in order, and they all have androids. Roger.
Yes.
And
the B1s.
So why are the clones created? To fight those armies of droid. Now, these armies of droid and the separatists are a false flag. So why are the clones created? Because you cannot suddenly conscript, millions of individuals to go fight droids. So they create this army, and the whole so-called Clone Wars are not an essential part of the story, because they are basically they become the army of occupation to go conquer the galaxy.
Sure.
So, Star Wars has always been character driven. The clones are very much a background element, a force without which you can't conquer a galaxy. You know what I mean? And however, I hear what this person is saying. I feel that there's a lot more development of the Clone Wars in the Clone War animated series. We actually see the Clone Wars. That's why it's called the Clone Wars. Again, watch the cartoon,
Yeah, I think the cartoon fills in a lot of those gaps, because one of them, yes, how are you going to fight this entire droid army? You need the clone army, but the Republic and the Jedi weren't going to get there on their own. So this army was created in secret. But the fact that this army was presented to them as a gift, but they say, oh no, you paid for it. It was just paid for 10 years ago by a long dead Jedi master. Please don't ask any questions, just accept this gift. And they should already be on high alert, because the prototype for the clones, the blueprint, has already tried to kill Obi-Wan.
But they don't know that.
but Obi-Wan does. He's on Camino. They like fight in the rain, and then he tries to shoot him out of the sky. I mean, it's a whole like that
No.
alone should be like, let's put a pause on this. This is the guy that we're getting multiple millions of him. I know you say that like that would be a little concerning, I think,
Yeah,
personally. And Yoda's supposedly like the most wise, and they just accept this gift without doing due diligence, without anything.
because all the characters in those sequels are part of a system. You know,
Hmm.
it's the Republic,
Yeah,
and the Republic is flawed. Even the Jedi Order is flawed. You know, everything is based to various dogmas. It's very rigid. The whole this whole civilization is prime for an empire to emerge because it's stuck in its ways, and you know, in the fog of war, you're gonna favor uh, uh, a weapon that's going to give you the advantage without really giving too much thought to reasoning. You
sure.
know? So, did they think about everything, every detail? No, probably not. Did they need to move the story along? You know, does it give us, you know, the fodder to make fun of them a little bit? Yes. You know, but the Jedi Order falls. The Republic falls. It's like there's a reason why they fall. They
Hmm.
fall because they're flawed. You know what I mean? But I think it's genius. I mean, and you said you had mentioned that, you know, you when Order
66.
66 should have been Order 666.
I
When
know,
Order
right?
when Order 66 happens, it is heartbreaking because if you have watched the animated series,
Yes,
you get to see the clones fight alongside the
completely.
Jedi's and everyone we know, and then there's a switch of a button, and then those who were your friends turn against you to kill you. That is
Yep.
crazy.
But see, that's what I'm saying. When the movie came out in
Yeah,
2005 and we see Order 66 declared, we're like, oh, bummer. The army turned on the mysterious army
yeah,
of unknown origin turned on them. What
yeah,
a surprise. And we don't really care. However, fast forward 15 years later to 2020 in the final episodes of the Clone Wars, and you see Rex attack Ahsoka, and you can see him fighting it, and then like that whole. I know I've said multiple times things have made me cry, and I get a little misty. It's not like real crying. I fucking wept during that entire sequence when she's trying to figure out why they're all trying to kill her. Because we've now spent these years with these clones who start out very cookie cutter, but the more time they spend with the Jedi, they start to branch out and develop their own personalities, and they give themselves tattoos and change their hair and they claim their own names to claim their own personhood and individuality. And you realize that these aren't just one person, it's 15 million different people, however many million, I don't know, lots of millions. And then for them all to just snap back into their programming and to kill the people that they've been fighting alongside, that is devastating. And none of that emotion is in the movie. None of it.
but there's enough there for you to extrapolate your own lore, your own
Fair.
reasoning. It's not going to spell everything out. Again, certain elements have to be kept in the background to favor the central characters, but there's enough there that you can, you know, you can expand on it and come up with your own theories and yes, let's talk about the condition of the clone. We can. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not it's there's enough there for to the word is to it's not decipher, help me.
To
Dig deep to
dig into. Yeah.
yeah, okay, all
Yeah.
right. Sorry, French guy over here. There's
I'm
enough
following you.
there's enough so that aspect was not developed. Sorry, person who asked that question on the internet. but I think there's enough there for us to draw our own conclusion. And I'm extremely, what you said at the end there was extremely important, because there's in the various series and movies, there's the development of individual characters amongst the clones. That is the story arc. But that was not the question of the person. No, the question was, how come it wasn't a bigger deal? To answer that question specifically, I would say that that is explored at length. The Clone Wars are explored at length in the Clone Wars series, not in the movies. But that's where the series became an essential part of the Star Wars lore.
Sure. And we wouldn't have gotten the series had they done a thorough job in the movies. So
Yeah.
we have that to thank for. I'm glad we have the series.
So to branch out a little bit away from this question and talk about the technical aspect of animation, one thing I'm very pleased about is how animation at Lucasfilm has evolved from very, very woody characters floating. It's very hard to have characters touch the ground when they run, even in CGI. That connection of gravity. And when you start to look at these details, early days, Clone Wars, fortunately,
Not the best.
Not the best. Fortunately, we had, but this is the incredible feat of innovation that has characterized Lucasfilm since day one. It's let's always strive to do better. I mean, they always have made things better. And there's it's a how do we best what we did prior. When you look at what the Bad Batch is in terms of animation now, Rebels doesn't apply. Rebels was in a different category in terms of animation.
Sure.
But when you look at Bad Batch and the texture mapping, which means that every single item, whether it's a helmet or skin or the general background of a jungle or rocks, everything has become so detailed. There's water flowing, incredibly hard to do in animation. It's spectacular. There's no other words. You look at the detail of the animation on how Omega is like running across a landscape or skipping on rocks, or you're there. They're still cartoon characters, but the liveliness, we're not in the uncanny valley.
No. And you brought a really interesting observation when we were watching the 3 episodes at your place. I think it was the second episode that's mostly shot mostly in the dark, and it's almost entirely lit by their glow rods, but they're moving glow rods because they're running. Yeah. So it's several small light sources constantly in motion while the characters are in motion, and how incredibly difficult that is to do well, or if at all, to do at all, much less do well.
I've developed a little bit of a theory on there's quite a few episodes in this last season which are dark. And my theory is, again, budget constraints, because they're going all out with certain episodes and they're holding back. You have less texture mapping and therefore less detail to put into things when you're shooting a dark episode.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's not as revealing, and you can skip on that. And I think maybe I'm completely wrong, because it doesn't take away from anything. The mood is set, the mood is there. But yes, it will take less time from a budgetary point of view. If you have only X amount to work with on a whole series, you're gonna maybe sit around and go, oh, we can do this one in the dark, folks. And we're gonna cut up
in a cave.
Yes,
actually, that makes sense. There are cave episodes in every season. I'm now going back and realizing, like, oh, there's the one where they're mining the stuff and they fall inside the thing. And I'm not good at explaining things today, but yeah, cave episodes, lots of them.
And while we have, I categorize these animated series into two portions. There are episodes that move the story along, and there
Mhm.
are episodes that are video games, you know.
Yes,
And you made a point, I'm like, yeah, that's just kid stuff. And you're like, well, it's a kid's show, isn't it? You said that. And I was
I
like, is
did.
it? Is it? Is it? So, uh, so, but what that goes to show is that it can serve, it can be a kid's show and it can be an adult show as well. Um,
I mean,
uh,
Bluey is a kids show, but the adults watch it for themselves. It's not,
I don't know
I
what
know
that,
it's a very young kids show on Disney Plus, and I have a lot of friends that don't have kids that watch it because it's so good and
hmm,
it speaks to so many different adult experiences. But it is a show for children, like preschool age children. But I mean, the argument there just being that you can have more than one ideal audience for something.
yeah. But the episode before last, I watched it. You hadn't watched it yet, and I said, Anna, first you're going to cry,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going to yell at your screen,
Yep.
and that's how engaged we are with a cartoon.
With a fucking cartoon. I did,
Was I right?
yes. I got misty, like I said. I don't often like fully cry. I mean, I did at the last four episodes of Clone Wars, but like I did get misty. And then the part where you said I would yell at the television, Nick recounted to me, I literally went, gah, like GAH, like a comic strip ack, but gah. It was, yeah, he said it was very funny, but I did actually audibly yell at the television screen
Which, is I mean, I don't know
for
what's
good
strange.
reason.
I don't know what's stranger. It's like if you have someone in the room with you, and you're engaged, but I'm by myself 99% of the time. And here I am, like literally screaming at an object in the loneliness of my existence.
Well, you have to come over this week then. Take some Benadryl,
The cats.
the cats.
Yeah.
We will have freshly vacuumed just to make sure no additional cat hair.
So let's collectively thank George Lucas and all his associates.
Oh,
And
yes.
Dave Filoni for taking up the mantle, and Jon Favreau for developing incredible series with The Mandalorian, and let's be so grateful that we have the Star Wars universe in our lives.
Well,
Wow.
and thank you for all the plot holes in the prequels because without them we wouldn't have all of this. We wouldn't have Rebels and Clone Wars and Bad Batch and the Obi-Wan show. Any of it. We wouldn't have any of it.
Yes, there is nothing greater than Star Wars.
I think that's fair.
The end.
The end. How do you say the end? Fin. Huh?
La fin.
La fin. Okay. So I know a little bit of French.
Hmm?
I know a little bit of French.
Oui.
Oui. Non.
Oh,
Avoir.
just to circle back to the very beginning of this, which will be edited down to a digestible length, I hope.
Yes, don't worry.
Obviously, what we watched in France was La Guerre des Étoiles in French.
Yes.
So we had
Was it dubbed or was it subtitled?
You would have the opportunity to go see a subtitle movie, but that was very, very few. You had to seek it out. So definitely we didn't get James Earl Jones. We got some other actor.
Interesting. I would have thought it
Yes.
was the other way around, that subtitles were easier to find and the dubbed was less.
No. Everything was dubbed then because that was the most commercially popular format. So
I want to try and find a clip of French Darth Vader.
Luc, je suis ton père.
Non! Merde! Sacre bleu!
Dude, that's what we're going to. That's going to be our next podcast. We're going to read Star Wars dialogue in French.
I am going to find a clip of French Darth Vader. Luke,
Je suis ton père.
je suis ton père. Non, ce n'est pas vrai. Is that right? Did I say it right?
Parfait. La guerre des étoiles.
La guerre des étoiles.
Bum, 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 bum.
Mark, it has been a pleasure.
Same here. Here's to